May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our living Redeemer. Amen. They stood there staring, mouths open, hearts pounding, the dust of the Mount of Olives still clinging to their sandals. Jesus, their teacher, their rabbi, their Lord, lifted up before their very eyes, ascending into heaven. And now all that was left was a patch of sky and a memory growing colder by the second. The angels asked, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking up toward heaven?" It's a good question, a painful one, an honest one. Why do we stand here gazing into the sky, hoping that the last word isn't really the last word? The ascension of Jesus has always struck me as one of those quiet but seismic moments in the life of the church. Not as loud as Pentecost, not as wrenching as Good Friday, not as jubilant as Easter morning. And yet at this moment, Jesus departing from the disciples' sight is a sort of pivot, a hinge, the turning of a page from one kind of presence to another. If we read the Gospel and Acts closely, we find a curious mixture of absence and promise. Luke tells us he was lifted up and a cloud took him out of their sight. A cloud. When we think of clouds in the Old Testament, they are ancient, mysterious, and full of memory. Think of the cloud that led Israel through the wilderness, the cloud that hovered over Mount Sinai, the cloud that filled the temple, and now the cloud that receives Jesus. What is happening here is not Jesus taking a long elevator ride into the heavens. This isn't about geography, but it is about authority. He is not going away, he is being enthroned. The ascension is the coronation of Christ. He ascends not to leave us, but to reign over all creation, not from afar, but intimately, personally, and universally. Still, we understand the disciples. We know something about what they are going through. For so much has happened so quickly. Resurrection joy had only just begun to take root. And now the risen Jesus is gone again in a way that they cannot reverse. "Why do you stand looking up?" the angels ask. And the answer, though unspoken, is probably this: because we don't know what else to do. But the angelic question has a direction to it. Why are you still standing here? In other words, he's giving you the Spirit. He's given you the promise. He's given you the call to be witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And this is where the ascension, often overlooked, becomes absolutely critical for the church. Because if Easter was the proclamation that Christ is risen, then ascension is the commissioning that Christ is reigning, and we are now His body in the world. I once heard a story about a pastor who early in his ministry visited a young couple whose first child had been born with profound disabilities. The pastor admitted later that he felt pretty helpless. He didn't know what to say. He stumbled through a prayer, mumbled a few words, and left feeling like a failure. But years later, that family would remind him of that day. "You were Christ to us," they said. "You showed up. You prayed. You didn't leave us alone." And that, dear friends, is the truth that Ascension presses upon us. Christ has not abandoned the world. He has entrusted it to us, the church, His body. We are not waiting for Jesus to return before the work of the kingdom begins. No, the work has already begun. He ascended so that the Spirit might descend. He withdrew His visible presence so that His presence might fill all things. He reigns not from a throne locked away in heaven, but from the hearts and hands and voices of ordinary people, people like you, called to be His witnesses in word and deed. And yet we do sometimes find ourselves staring at the sky, don't we? Grief does that. Confusion does that. And so does doubt. We keep looking for signs. We keep watching the clouds. And sometimes, honestly, it feels like Christ has gone too far, perhaps out of reach. The world feels abandoned, torn by war, division, disease, and despair. But listen closely. The angels are still speaking. Why do you stand looking up toward heaven? This Jesus will come again. The ascension is not the end of the story. It is the promise that the story is still unfolding and that Jesus Christ will return, not as a stranger, but as the one who bore the cross for us all. And in the meantime, He is not distant. He is reigning. He is not absent. He is present in bread and wine, in word and water, in the fellowship of believers, in the cries of the suffering, and in the hands of those who serve. So yes, we are people of the sky. We look up, we watch, we hope, but we are also people of the earth. We walk, we serve, we proclaim. Not because we have all the answers, but because we have the promise. Christ has ascended, Christ is Lord, Christ will come again. So let's not just stand here looking up. Let us go into the world, His world, with courage and love. Amen.